Awesome. Well, we all live, like I said, promised we're going to come on today and we're going to be talking to Erin, who I'm going to let introduce herself. As you've seen already through the event, we're going to be talking around the habit revolution or evolution,
Yeah.
however you want to call it. And yeah, I've actually known Erin for quite a while now, I guess. Well,
Yeah, I think you
years
helped
and
me
years.
set up PTD like 4 or 5, 6 years ago, somewhere, maybe longer
Yeah,
than that. I don't know.
definitely a long time ago. It gets a bit weird with
Yeah.
the whole COVID thing, doesn't it? Like,
Yeah, I can't
feels
tell
like the
time
middle bit
anymore.
confused. Yeah, time's just completely out the window. But yeah, ever since then, Erin's gone and done some pretty cool stuff, especially in the habit side of this industry. And we spoke a few months ago now, I think it was, about doing this training on here today, talking about what you're actually up to now and how you can actually help other trainers with what you're up to. So I'm actually going to let you jump straight into it. But if anyone's got any questions as we go through this, I do have the comments open as always. So if you've got any questions whatsoever, just drop them into the comments, and yeah, I'll fire them over at the end of the presentation, if that's cool.
Awesome. Sounds good. All
Awesome.
right, let me
Over to
bring
you.
my screen up and we'll get rolling. All right, guys, I will introduce myself in just a second, but just wanted to talk real quick on what we'll be touching on today. So the title of today's presentation is the Habit Coach Revolution or Evolution. And we'll talk more about like why we call it the revolution and evolution kind of towards the end here. But the gist of it is, what is Habit Science 101? I'm sure you've seen in the last couple of years that habits are kind of like all the jam right now. You see them in all the newspapers, New York Times, Wall Street Journal, whatever you got on in your neck of the woods over there across the pond. But habits are everything, and they're trickling into the personal training business. They're trickling into the nutrition coaching business, and it's taking over the industry. So how can we actually understand the science behind habit formation and use that in our coaching practices is what I'll kind of give you just a little inkling of today. And as said earlier, I'll introduce myself here. My name is Erin Laverone. I have been in the nutrition, health, fitness coaching space since, 2008. So I have no idea, what is that, 14 years now?
14 years,
very, very long time. And I started online coaching, 2015, and that's probably maybe 2016 is when I met Ash and got in with PT Distinction and started transitioning my other coaching business that way. And then in 2019, I wouldn't say I started then, but I started coming across this conundrum in my coaching practice where I had 2 degrees, bachelor's and a master's in exercise physiology. I had both of precision nutrition's certifications, they're level 1 and level 2. I'd studied sleep and recovery. I'd studied kind of like mindset and psychology. And then I started studying like built environments and walkable cities and blue zones, and kept coming across this problem. Like, no matter how much I knew about how to help my clients live a healthy lifestyle from multiple aspects, I kept coming across this one problem, and it was the same problem that a bunch of my friends in the business were coming across too, which is, how do we do the things, or how do we get our clients to do the things they need, want, and know they should do when we're not there in a session or like in a live message chat, when we're not there holding their hand, the things they really want to do and are coming us to do, but when they don't literally have us, walking them through it. And so in 2019, I ran across on LinkedIn my business partner, Samuel Salzer, and he is a Swedish behavioral designer in the behavioral science field, and has worked on multiple companies and multiple health related apps of basically this problem, like how do we get people to take action and do the things they want to do and build healthy habits. And I had got in touch with him and basically said, hey, I noticed this gap in the fitness field. No one's really teaching us fitness professionals, nutrition professionals, like how do we, like what makes a behavior happen? How do we make decisions? What makes a behavior turn into a habit? And he kind of thought there would be that type of gap in the coaching space, but he never really coached. He was more in the kind of technology sector, but had worked with health products. And so we came together to form the Habit Coach Professionals in kind of mid 2019. So we've been together a little over 3 years. What I want to get into today is we'll just touch on these 4 main, and towards the end, I'll tell you a little bit more about the Habit Coach Professionals. And if you're interested in becoming a habit coach, how you could potentially do that. So today's overview, we're going to talk about the biggest coaching hurdle, which I've kind of already hinted at. the science of habit formation, or at least the very basics of it, because we do have a course where we spend 10 weeks diving into it. And then what we look at as like this evolution in coaching, or the coaching revolution that's going on right now, and then how you can become a habit coach. And again, if there's any questions at any point, pop them into the chat, and then we'll tackle them at the end. That way we can just make sure we respect everybody's time and stay relatively on track with time there. So the first thing, maybe Ash, if you could read these back to me from the chat, that I would love people to pop in there right now, is how many days does it take to form a habit? 18, 21, 66, or 257? If you just want to throw some of those back at me, Ash, that are popping in there.
Cool. I have to give it like 20 seconds to go through. There's always a delay between Zoom and things on there.
Worries. And no making up answers. I had some creative people like last week on a different presentation where they made up their own answer, but choose one of those four. Play the game here.
Yeah, because they've got one of those four. I've already got some 14s coming in.
Those honorary
21 is probably the most popular one at the moment.
Okay.
Add to the numbers that are on there. So we've had like people saying a year. Which I suppose 257 is close enough. But yeah, 21's the most popular one.
Okay, cool. Well, I'm going to keep the suspense building there, and I'm actually just going to have you pause on that. If you didn't submit your number, keep your number in your head. But we're going to come back to that in about 15 minutes there and actually answer that question. First, though, we're going to talk about what is this big hurdle that all coaches face. And as I talked about, I kind of hinted at it earlier, in like what I found in my struggles is like, how do we actually get people to do the things they need, want, and know they should do when we're not there holding their hands. And in the science, in behavioral science and habit science, what that is technically called is the intention action gap. So it's this gap between what our clients or even what ourselves intend to do and actually taking action. And oftentimes people are coming to us because they have all these good intents, like I intend to, eat well or exercise or whatever it might be. And oftentimes they fail to take action, or at least fail to take action consistently to where it becomes kind of a habit, automatic in their daily lives. Just to give a couple more examples, every day our clients, like I said, might intend to eat healthy, might intend to exercise, they might intend to be a great partner. Maybe they intend to perform well at work, and oftentimes still they end up, snacking and eating poorly or eating fast food. Maybe they, instead of exercising, they kind of do whatever's easy and entertaining and maybe unhealthy at the time. They get stuck in old bad habits and they end up procrastinating a lot of things. And so this is the intention action gap. And as coaches, this really should be one of our main jobs right now, is how do we actually close that gap, or ideally like delete that gap between intention and action, so that whatever our clients intend to do, they actually take action on it and do that consistently so that it becomes habitual. And so how do we do that? Well, we have to understand the science of habit formation. And so before we get into exactly what that is, we should define what a habit is. So habits are automatic behaviors developed as people repeatedly have rewarding experiences from performing a given action in a given context. So that's kind of a mouthful, but we're going to break the science of habit formation down into 4 steps that basically covers those points there. And hopefully that will make a little more sense by the time we get through it. So in order for a behavior to turn into a habit, we have to get activated in a specific context. And that was part of the definition there of a habit. And so what are activators? They are cues, they are prompts, they are triggers, which they're also known as, in our environment, whether that's our internal environment or our external environment, that tell us there's a problem that needs to be solved, that we need to take some type of action to solve this problem. And there are, again, I hinted at 2 types of activators, 2 main types. There are internal activators, which are cues that come from within us, within our body, things like anxiety or emotions or cravings. And then there are external activators, cues that come from our external environment. So maybe it's it's us as a coach saying, hey, in the gym, it's time to work out, let's get to go. Or it's a friend that you're going to go out for a walk with, or it's an alarm clock reminding you to do the work you need to do, or some type of power song that's getting you into the mode in your workout to start going hard on those reps. And those might be like positive external activators, but there potentially could also be some type of negative external activators that distract us from taking the actions we want. So that might be things like the dings and pings from our phone. It could be the smell of some delicious, tempting food that we really ideally don't want to eat, but that's triggering us to, have some type of hunger signal. And it could be our, TV that's just looks so convenient and easy to lounge in front of rather than going and doing our healthy movement habit. So internal, external activators, they're neither positive or negative in and of themselves, but they could be positive or negative depending on what our desired behavior is. The second thing that needs to happen for a behavior to do the habits, and this kind of seems silly, but it's oftentimes overlooked, is we actually have to have the ability to do the behavior. And this we'll dive into more in the course. We don't really dive too much in here, but this actually really is twofold. It's both our actual ability, do we have the knowledge, skills, tools, resources to do it, and our perceived ability, do we have the self-efficacy and confidence to do it, whether or not we have the actual ability. But there is one thing that can give us really high ability, and that is especially when we are starting out with a new behavior that we want to turn into habit, to make it ridiculously easy. And there's some research out there that shows that like initially it should almost be like laughably easy. God, what's his name? I'm blanking on this guy from Stanford. He talks about how if you want to start a flossing habit, you should literally just get up every morning and floss one tooth. And it just sounds like freaking ridiculous. But if you floss that one tooth, like you're likely to probably floss the other teeth because it just feels stupid not to. And really what we're just trying to do is just set that minimum low so that we always see successful reps early on and we don't enter a failure state. That way we can consistently get kind of a rewarding experience out of it. So we want to make it ridiculously easy to do. This is going to age me or potentially put me out of context across the pond, but this is Mr. Bean. Hopefully you all know who he is.
Yeah, we all know he's over here.
Okay. I was like, otherwise, I'm probably not going to be able to use this GIF in like 10 years or maybe 5. But like this is his morning routine, right? So like his little stretch routine, he's got some side bends against the sink there and some arm circles, and that seems ridiculously easy. So he's super consistent at doing it there. And we kind of want it to almost be, like I said, laughably easy at first until we can get enough successful reps in to where we want to increase that intensity. And just a hypothetical question here, whoops, getting ahead of myself, that you can maybe pop into the chat box 1 or 2 of these words that I'm about to show here. If Mr. Bean failed to do that morning routine that I just showed, whatever his daily habit goal is, to what degree do you all think that his personal factors are to blame versus his environmental factors? So if you just want to put person happen and then Ash, if you can just relay them back to me there.
Yeah. So I'll try to give him this little delay that comes through. always takes a few. It's always a strange one.
Yeah. I should also mention while we're letting those roll in, I've got the lovely, your internet is unstable note here. So if I pop off for a second, I will be back on as soon as I can.
So good. It normally catches up. I always find it really funny with Zoom. Like whenever if you cut offline for a second, you just talk really, really fast and it catches up with you. It's very strange. Not quite sure it's a good thing or a bad thing.
Yeah. All right. We getting any of those coming in, personal or environmental?
Just a bit of both. People are just saying like, some people are saying like, can you maybe explain a bit more what you mean between personal and environmental, as in like which one affects? But I'm guessing you mean as in which one has affected him not getting his goal.
Yeah, like personal would be like, his willpower, his like confidence, stuff that comes kind of innately, his ability to set himself up. Versus environmental are like external things in his environment, his context, the people around him, his workplace, that type of thing.
Let's put it in. External seems to be the most popular one.
Awesome. We've got a smart crew here. Cool. So yeah, a lot of times when I'm talking to coaches, we often get personal, and people think it's like, oh, their willpower is just not strong enough. They're not motivated enough. They don't have the, perceived ability to do this, the confidence. But really what the research shows is that oftentimes our environment is playing a massive role in whether or not we're able to do these habits. And yes, the willpower and whatnot, but more often than not, a bigger role player is the environment and someone's ability to do the behavior. And I'll
definitely.
just leave it at that for now, but we do, spend a couple weeks actually diving really deep into that in the course that we offer there. But
It's something I
environment
really
plays a
find
big role.
interesting. Like I really do
Yeah.
find willpower an interesting thing. It's always
Mm-hmm.
a lot of people always talk about motivation and willpower as such as a way to get people to do stuff, but to me, you have
Right.
no control over it. So why would you why
Yeah.
would you do
So
something like that?
funny thing is that the research actually shows is that those people who have the highest willpower are that the ones that actually don't ever need to use it because they set up their environment in such a way that it makes their habits easy to do. And that the only people who actually have like a depletion, quote unquote, it's really almost a figment of our imagination if we can set up our environments properly.
Yeah, definitely 100% agree with that.
Yeah.
And everything.
Crazy, right?
Yeah.
Mr. Bean jokes. All right. The thing too with ability is that distance plays a huge role in ease. So the closer you are to something, the more likely you are to do it. So if we live very close to the gym, I forget the exact number. It's like 3 miles or 5 miles. If you live less than that from your gym, like the amount that you'll go to the gym like 3 or more days a week like exponentially increases versus if you live more than that 3 to 5 mile radius. And I'm sorry, I know some of you are in kilometers over there. I don't know that exact conversion, but being close will make it way more likely to do, especially, if you have these days with COVID, you have that workout set of whatever it might be set up at your house. That's going to make it way more easy to stick to that workout habit. But conversely, if you've got those bad, we'll not use bad, maybe those things that aren't in line with your desired behaviors and your long-term goals, like some fast food places on your commute home at the turnoff that you have to take to get home every day. Well, that's going to be a huge regular queue, and you might eat out more often than if you didn't have the fast food, on your turnoff or close to where you live. So distance plays a big role in ability in turning a behavior into a habit and making things easier. Rule number 3, for a behavior to turn into a habit, it must lead to a rewarding experience. And this one was a game changer to me when I was first learning about habit science. Because in the literature, what we actually look at as the outcome of an experience with a behavior is we look at it as rewarding and we look at it as punishing. And punishing sounds extreme, but really what punishing encapsulates is anything have like no feeling toward it and we're like apathetic. It's not really rewarding. We're just like, I'm doing it because I have to. It's not directly punishing. Like it's not painful, but it's just not very fun. Well, that counts as a punishing experience. And if something is punishing, unfortunately, it's not likely to happen again. It has to be rewarding for it to happen again. The saying in the literature is that what is immediately rewarded is repeated, and what is immediately punished, or even if we're just apathetic towards it, is avoided. And where this really came into play, and it kind of has to do with willpower a little bit too, is I thought growing up, before I knew anything about behavioral habit science, people often said to me, like, Erin, you have such strong willpower. Like you meet your goals, you take action on what you want. But really, and I thought when people would say that, kind of reinforced this view that I had, was that like, well, those who give into immediate gratification, they're weak. They don't have the willpower to, get over it. But on the contrary, we are wired for millennia to seek immediate gratification. And so instead of looking down on that or trying to willpower our way through it, how do we use that to our advantage? How do we use that need for immediate gratification to make whatever we're trying to do immediately rewarding so that we repeat it? And some things are not inherently, especially initially, immediately rewarding. Like exercise may be something that someone needs to do to achieve their goal, but it's not rewarding inherently. And so we have to use these other tricks based in behavioral science that we do teach in our course, these other strategies to make things immediately rewarding, especially initially, so that we can acquire that behavior as a habit. So that's really, really important. And then rule number 4 is that repetition and consistency are key. So in order for a behavior to turn into a habit, we have to do it often. And so this brings us back to that original poll of how many days does it take to form a habit. I know we had one rogue coach out there who said 14, but it sounds like most of them said 21.
21 was the most common one, yeah.
Cool. So if you said 21, I wish I could say kudos, but instead I kind of want to, face palm myself. But not your fault. That's super popular. It's all over. Even, the New York Times over here, I think, puts out 21 Days to Form a Habit. But funny story where that actually comes from, I forget the exact decade. I want to say 1970s. It was this neurosurgeon, and he was testing out people's ability to adapt after they had a leg amputated. And so what he realized is that it took about 21 days on average for their neurobiology to adapt so that they would stop having phantom leg syndrome and think that their leg was still there after it was amputated. And that kind of just got extrapolated to that like, oh, anything we need to adapt to neurobiologically takes about 21 days, and somehow that's stuck with habits. So that's where the 21 comes from. Unfortunately, it's not quite true. If you said 66, kudos to you. You are sort of right. But if you said 18 or 257, you're also sort of right. So I can give this presentation to Ash to distribute or put in the group thereafter. But if you were to click on this link to this study, what they found is that when you are acquiring a habit, there's obviously a lot of factors to play into it, right? There's your built environment, there's your social environment, there's your ability to do it, and all the things we've talked about previously. And depending on how complicated the habit is, it can take anywhere from 18 to 257 days to turn into a habit, with the average being that 66-day mark. So it's quite a variety, depends on quite a variety of things. And that's why we need to be able to understand habit science to know, well, what is going to help us make this behavior turn into a habit a little bit faster? And can we, decomplicate it? Can we set up our environment a little better? Can we increase our ability level to be able to do that? And so really repetition is key, not days. So if we do it multiple times a day, then it's probably going to happen faster than if we only do it like maybe multiple times or once a week. And the old saying from the neurobiology world, or your biology class in high school or college, is that neurons that fire together to wire together. So the more often we do a behavior, the more likely and faster those neurons are to wire together and thus fire together as something that's habitual or automatic, which is ideally what we're after. So this gives us what we like to call the habit loop here. This loop needs to happen in order for a behavior to turn into a habit. And the more times this loop goes around, the faster that behavior will turn into a habit. So just to recap, we have to get activated in a specific context. We have to have the ability to do the behavior. We have to have a rewarding experience, and our environments have to be set up in such a way that repetitions can be supported and done over and over and over again to keep going through this loop here. So that brings us to what I like to call the habit coach revolution. If we think about coaching in the past, let's think like maybe 10, 15 years ago, it's about when I started. I'll give it from the context of where I started, which was as a personal trainer. Many personal trainers, all they really had to do, like a very base level, is to sit for an exam. They could study for it. Hopefully they did. You could also have gotten a degree in like exercise physiology or something of the like, and I did as well. But all you really had to do was pass this like 3-hour exam, and the passing rate, I think, was like 63%. So you had to be like a C student to pass this exam. Hopefully most of us did much better than that. I honestly can't remember what I got on that test. It was so long ago. But once you passed that test, you probably worked for some type of big box gym initially. And you saw your clients maybe 2-3 times a week if you were lucky, for 45 to 60 minutes. You got in there, you did their workout with them, you watched their form, you set the pins for them, make sure they lifted in the right weight, you counted their reps. And then once you were done with their session, you pretty much had no interaction with the client. You were on to the next client. You didn't have a lot. There was not a lot on Facebook. In the gym I grew up in, it was like you didn't share your personal life then with your clients. It was just in the gym with the client, and you didn't see them or really talk much with them until the next session. So that was kind of about 10 to 15 years ago. If we fast forward to right now, not only do, we're a little bit well educated, I think most of us, like a lot of us, have gotten those advanced degrees. A lot of us have done super advanced internships with really cool people, like maybe, I don't know, Eric Cressy, Mike Boyle, other people of the like. And we also probably have studied other things besides just fitness and physiology and biomechanics, like nutrition or sleep and recovery and whatnot. And so these days, we are no longer just asked to, write periodized fitness programs, but we're also asked to give nutrition advice, and we're sometimes asked to play the role of like therapists and listen to all their problems. And we have to sit there and run our own businesses now too, especially in the days of COVID, and we have to figure out how to do that online. So we call Ash to do that there because it sucks doing it by ourselves. So we've got all these big asks to do. And then on top of that, we're also asked to like, all right, how do we get our clients to do all kinds of healthy behaviors when we're not, coaching them in a live session or asynchronously over the coaching app for their fitness and nutrition? And really getting them to do those things on their own is almost more important than just doing the things when we're there with them, because that's what's going to help them long-term achieve their goals. And honestly, that I think is quite overwhelming, to be asked to do all those things and to potentially not have the knowledge, skills, and tools to do so, because people or companies in our field are not really offering this kind of behavioral science course. And those that are, oftentimes it's treated as like a chapter at the end of some type of certification. And they talk about trans-theoretical model of change and stage of change, but they don't really tell you like, okay, so if they're a next stage of change, like, so what, like, what do I do with this? And how do I actually, how does behavior happen in the first place? And how do I, help someone and discover the problem of why the behavior isn't happening in the first place? So that's where kind of habit science is. And this is what we kind of think of as this evolution in coaching, and really an opportunity, a revolution in coaching to incorporate behavioral and habit science into our coaching practice, so we can finally help our clients achieve their long-term goals and create healthy habits that last. So my business partner and I, a little over 3 years ago when we first met, we talked with a ton of coaches and did a lot of research. And we realized this massive gap in health and fitness coaching that I just talked about, which is how do we understand behavioral science and figure out how to get our clients to do the things they need, want, and should do. But not only that, we're also humans as coaches ourselves. And while we might be really good at fitness or nutrition, there's likely other areas of our life that we're not good at. And this behavioral science can play a role in that, like potentially habits with running our business that we need to be a little bit better at. So in understanding behavioral science, how do we also leverage that to build a sustainable and future-proof coaching business so that you also as a coach can live the life you want to live? And so we built this course and company called the Habit Coach Professionals. It's a fun and interactive way to learn about behavioral science. And we do like to say that it should feel almost as epic as doing yoga in the Himalayas, but maybe not quite, because that sounds insanely epic. But we do get like amazing reviews on this course. We just wrapped one up about 2 weeks ago. And I don't know if y'all can read the size on the screen there, but if you get the printout, you'll be able to do that. But we always get amazing feedback on this. And one of the things we actually ask our coaches that have gone through it, as soon as they complete their exam at the end of the 10-week period, and before they even know their score and whether or not they've passed, we ask them, compared to other online courses, how would you rate the Habit Coach Professionals Level 1 certification? And on average, we get 9.14 out of 10 rating there. And we are really, really take pride in that, because we actually infuse behavioral science in how the course is presented, because we like to say you're making a habit while learning about habits. You're creating a learning a habit in the process. So it should be easy, it should be fun, it should be enjoyable to do and to create. So by the time you actually get done with the course, you've built a learning habit each day with the way that it is presented. So we take pride in providing an exceptional experience to you all if you decide to join us. So what exactly is this course? We basically bring you the latest in behavioral science and psychology into that nutrition, health, and fitness coaching space that we feel has really been missing. And like I said, and I've hinted at, topics include things like what makes a behavior happen in the first place? How can you help clients build habits that last? Sometimes our clients often act irrationally, and they may not even know it. They do things that aren't in line with their long-term goals and against the things they've told us they want. So how do we actually understand that and then use that to our advantage to help them do what they want to do? We talk about things like, how does identity shape habits? You may have heard the quote that we are what we repeatedly do. And the quote repeatedly do kind of hints at habits, right? Habits are repeated actions. So in some sense, we are a collection of our habits. So how does identity play a role in shaping habits, and how do habits play a role in shaping our identity? What's the difference between quality and junk motivation? you're on any type of social media, there's a whole lot of junk motivation out there. Just Google, what is it, Fitspo on Instagram, and you probably get every example of junk motivation there is. But quality motivation, what that really entails is like, we don't want to learn how to motivate our clients. We want to know, how do we get our clients to motivate themselves? And how do you do that? And then we teach you one of our proprietary tools of behavioral assessment. So how do you actually assess a behavior, whether it's a desired behavior or undesired behavior that we're doing or not doing? And how do you assess that so that you can understand the problem areas that are potentially keeping it from turning into a habit? And of course, a whole lot more. Our course is 10 weeks long. It is a cohort-based certification. So each day you are getting a little something. So if you do want to ever join us, be ready to like take a college class. It's not as intense. It's not sitting there for 60 to 90 minutes, but you do need to be able to set aside 15 to 20 minutes a day for 10 weeks, because we are literally having you build a habit while learning about habits. And that's why it's created that way. So we like to say it all starts with making the healthy choice the easy choice. And we call this the Habit Coach Revolution. We actually are onboarding right now for our next cohort, which starts August 29th and will run through November 6th. Registration is open through this Sunday. And if anybody on this call is interested in joining us, you do want to learn more about it and know if it's right for you, I encourage you to email us at habitcoachpro@gmail.com. But also, if you feel like you already feel like this is a course for you, sign up within the next 24 hours using this specific web link here, habitcoachpro.com/PTD Ninja, and we'll give you $250 off what the course price is going for right now, if you are interested. And then I would just love to answer any questions anybody might have right now too.
Awesome. Well, for us, a lot of the questions you asked that answered in that last 3 minutes.
Cool.
Talking about the course, which is all good. So anyone was asking about the course and stuff on there, we'll pop those links into the comments and maybe that email address as well, just in case they've got any questions about that, if that's cool. We've done some other questions from earlier on. Some I think you answered. So if you did answer it and I got distracted whilst I was writing stuff down, I apologize. Just tell me.
Yeah, no problem.
So let's go back over this one. There was one about you talked about the ability to do, the ability to do something. There was a big light bulb moment. Someone saying it was a big light bulb moment for them when you just said that, and it kind of made a lot of sense. And never really thought about the idea of, can a client actually do what I'm asking them to do in the first place, and that may be why they're struggling. But do you have any kind of, like, if that happens, if you find out a client is struggling to do something, what steps can you do to actually adapt that habit, whatever it is they're working on, to allow them to go and do it? Like, is there a process you go through or something like that?
So there are a variety of different strategies you could take. I would say the one I tend to default to, and we tend to have our coaches default to initially until they become a little bit more advanced with it, is whatever the behavior is. If we realize that they're being unsuccessful more often than being successful, what I want to ask them is, on a busy day, on a not good day, on a scale of 1 to 10, how likely do you think you're actually going to be able to do this? Now, we do have hopefully data, whether it's like saying it's like eating a piece of fruit with breakfast every day. And we've tried to do that. That seems too hard. They only hit it 2 out of 7 days last week, so they're quite unsuccessful. And then you have them think about it and they're like, well, I see the data, obviously it was pretty hard to do. And then maybe they start thinking about, like, why was it hard to do? But regardless, they might give it a rating. And so based on the data and what they start thinking about, they rate it like, I don't know, 4 out of 10. And so I then want to say, ideally, I want to get them to like an 8 out of 10 range. I want them, 80% of the time on a busy or bad day, I still want them to do the behavior. Especially initially, when they've built these skills up and habits getting a little bit more complicated, that might vary a little bit. But initially, I want them to be able to do it 80% of the time. But say they rank it like a 4. I don't immediately want to like scale it back so much to get them to an 8. But what I really want to know is, I want to ask them, what would need to happen for you in order to rate it a 5 instead of a 4? I just want to know, what's that gap between 1 point difference, because that's going to give you a ton of information. And I just want to shut up after that. And I want to see what they tell me, because that's going to help me scale it. Like, maybe they do need to go to less days, or maybe they need to change like the time of day they're doing it, or maybe they need to change something about their environment so it's easier to do. So there's a variety of ways. If I can just, you know, shut up and get it out of the way and figure out what's the gap between the current rating and just one rating up.
That's cool. I tell you what, I want to kind of like build on that little shut up thing you mentioned there a second ago, because did they cover that kind of stuff in the course as well? You mentioned, like, you know, the science behind it. Do you talk about how you actually have these coaching conversations? Like the ability to be quiet and listen is such an important thing when trying to help somebody. Like, do you cover that kind of stuff in the course as well?
Yeah, so in our very last week of the course, instead of going into the science, we actually go a little bit more into the arts. We think that's more of like an artful aspect of it, is like literally like shutting up and listening. How do you do, or how do you ask like right questions? How do you build trust so people will say things that give you details? But also, I wouldn't say we do it like directly, but we have a community hub that we have like daily interactions with, just typing chat. And then we have 4 75-minute discussion calls throughout the 10 weeks. And that's really where like the magic comes. Like, what does this actually like look like in an implementation setting? And then in the middle part, weeks 4 through 7 of the course, they actually have either a case study or self-coaching at the end of each week. And then our coaches are providing quite detailed feedback. We spend probably about 40 minutes on each person every week, reading through their case study or their applied coaching, and then giving them a video feedback on how that might look, depending on what they said. So I would say it's not like direct in the lessons, but it comes in that interaction part of the course for sure. The discussion calls are always just like pure gold, because we even learn new things. Like, there are so many ways you can implement this, and someone will say something, and I'm like, how have I never thought about that? Of course, that's brilliant. You know, just there's so many ways that humans are just these giant puzzles that there's a million ways you can implement things like this. Yeah. Oh no.
I love that as well.
Back.
Back now. We didn't miss anything. It's all good. It kind of like went fast. That's all caught up.
Okay.
I tell you what I like about that, and it sounds like it's very like application orientated. The fact that they can't just go through this course. Like, you know, you need these case studies. You got to do this and get feedback on it. So more than just learning the theory, it's like, well, actually, no, you take this theory, go and apply it, and let us help you apply this theory. That I love that about that. It's such a cool way.
So I'll just make a note on that. When we were doing our research before we built up the course, and we were talking to coaches and whatnot, and then just thinking about like experiences people had with other certifications and experiences I had with certifications, oftentimes it's you get this giant 300-page book and maybe some type of online portal, and you're left to kind of go at your own pace. And I'm speaking from 100% full experience. 2 years later, you're still not through the course. And then when you finally get through it and you get that exam, it's like, oh, that's finally out of the way. But you got like one golden nugget after like 2 years of work and a few $1,000s, you know? So, and then it was like never any like, okay, I know this, but then like humans are weird and crazy puzzles. Like, how do I actually put this into practice? So that was one thing we really wanted to put in the course, was like, you literally, from the first lesson, every lesson has what we call a habit coach challenge. So you literally have to start putting what you learned that day right into practice, whether that's on you personally or in your business or with friends or colleagues or even your clients. So application is a huge part of this course for sure.
I love that. Like I say, exactly the same experience I've had in courses before. Like, it's just about getting through it and no time limit on it, and not really applying that kind of stuff. You have to kind of figure out how to apply it. Or normally do another course to learn how to try and apply it.
Right. You're just trying to meet that 20 CEC credit for your primary cert or something. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Very much that.
Speaking from experience.
What other questions have got on the edge? So I know you've answered some of them already as it went through. So one of them was about the simple steps, which I think is probably, maybe I'm guessing you probably asked this a few times, especially by PTs and maybe first getting into the idea of habit coaching, where you know, they'll start a program, especially online. You see it quite a bit, like, I don't know, here's a nutrition plan, here's some workouts, and as you kind of mentioned earlier, you know, there's no real instant reward from workouts. There's no real instant reward from following a meal plan or anything like that. So, like, when you start to simplify this process down, what happens if you get pushback? That's how I described it here. So describe it as like, do you get pushback from clients sometimes and thinking it's too simple? I don't know whether they've had pushback before. I don't know whether they've had clients pushback from trying to do it, or whether they're thinking they might be pushback from a client. I don't know the context of the question, but yeah, do you get pushback with things?
So I would say the classic coaching answer is it depends. But there's probably going to be two things. So ideally is like, I would say trust, ask them, and hopefully you've built something up to like trust the process a little bit. And one thing that helps with that is get them to pick the behavior instead of you picking the behavior. So yes, people need to work out, but maybe you help them like pick the type of exercise, even if it's not the ideal exercises, you're just kind of getting them in the habit of moving and enjoying it. So getting them to have some autonomy in the process, and explain to them, a little bit of the science, and this might work for some people and it might not, but explain to them why you're doing it, the science behind it, and that we want to build those successful reps because success breeds success, versus if we get into a failure state, we're likely to go all or nothing. We're all out until we fail, and then there's nothing, and that gets us nowhere, right? Versus if we can have little successes and make a little bit of progress, those eventually stack up on each other. So we want to build those early reps. And part of that coaching process is like, all right, have they been successful 5 times and now they're bored and plateaued? So I need to incrementally level it up a little bit now. But if they're still having success and they're not bored and they're not plateaued, then why not keep sticking with that until we have that boredom point or that plateaued point where progress is not happening? Another thing is, what is our progress markers? Oftentimes we overlook a lot of progress markers, both our clients and ourselves, and it's helping them see all these areas that we have made progress. So like, yes, we've been working out for 2 weeks. You've hit all 4 of your workouts these last 2 weeks and you haven't lost weight. And we're using that weight as our progress marker because it came to us a weight loss goal. But if we look at, hey, you have come to the gym 8 times out of 8 times that you scheduled for this last week versus you hadn't gone to the gym, for the last 2 years, like that's huge. And there, I could give a variety of other examples here as well. But what I would say, the kind of motto I use with clients to make sure that like it's easy enough to fuel success, but not create a failure state early on. And failure states aren't necessarily bad. Like they can provide extremely valuable learning opportunities. But early on, especially with clients that have low self-efficacy and self-esteem and low confidence, we don't want to create those failure states. We want to create success. So the motto that we use and we teach our clients is we want them to feel stretched, but not strained. So it should be just easy enough that like they feel like, yes, I can do this. It might not be that laughably easy for all clients. It might be, but it might not. It might be just slightly challenging so that they get kind of that reward of completing the challenge, but not so challenging that it creates a failure state. Does that help answer it?
Yeah, it does. Yeah. I was quite impressed with that. That makes a lot of sense when you say it that way. Have you got, I know we only said like 45 minutes. Have you got time for one more question?
Yeah, I got time.
That's all right. I just thought I'd check. So I'll start asking away. So this one was quite early on in the thing. You're talking about rewarding outcomes. And you mentioned about, also that I kind of talked about there a second ago, where, for example, a workout's not necessarily got an immediate rewarding action. A rewarding outcome from that. So if you're trying to get this kind of like habit cycle going and you need to reward these particular habits, how do you take something like, okay, well, she kind of covered it a little bit in that last question, but how do you take something like that and give it a rewarding habit? How do you break that particular, okay, we're going to be more active here, we're going to maybe go do this workout, but how do you make those smaller rewarding habits?
Yeah, so we spend a whole 2 weeks on this in the course, but I'll try to give you two little two little nuggets here. One of them, I feel like half the time, especially like if we're talking about exercise, and if we're talking about that, like me as a coach, I'm a personal trainer, a fitness coach of some type. Sometimes we need to get out of our own way and get out of our own biases, and that like maybe prescribing a workout, even though like, X, lifting program and this many days of cardio, you've seen over and over with clients gets this weight loss result. But maybe you need to get out of your own way initially and just find something that your client likes to do that's creating movement. So maybe it's you holding them accountable and supporting them going to like a dance class or a martial arts class like once a week to get that cardio in, instead of going to the gym and doing some mindless, boring, repetitive movement on a machine where they're staring at a brick wall. So sometimes that's the case where like, how can we support, especially if they're online clients and we don't have to be there with them, like how can we support them in finding a movement practice, if that's what our goal right here is, to get them exercising or moving, that like they will actually inherently enjoy, just to get them in the like habit of moving and linking enjoyment to movement. And then we can maybe over time start to build in those more formal workouts that will actually help them make progress faster towards our goals. The second thing I would say is we have a handful of strategies that are actually based in behavioral science that we can use. So just one of them that I'll give you that makes something more rewarding is something we call temptation bundling. It's made famous by a researcher called Katie Milkman. And the original study she did was, let's see, it was called Holding the Hunger Games Hostage. So she and a bunch of her students loved the Hunger Games audiobook. I suppose you could also do the Hunger Games movies, since we can watch those on our phones now. But basically what she decided was that the only time she could listen or watch the Hunger Games was when she was doing her cardio at the gym. At no other time could she listen or watch that. And what this is basically, the gist of temptation bundling from a scientific perspective is that we pair an inherently enjoyable activity, listening to the Hunger Games or watching the Hunger Games, with that kind of need to, should do, have to do behavior that we really kind of don't want to do, that's not very rewarding inherently itself. But the main thing with it is that we have to make a pact with ourselves that is the only time we can do that. So the only time we're going to listen to, the Hunger Games podcast or our favorite artist, or watch our favorite, drama TV show, is when we are on the elliptical for 30 minutes at the gym. At no other time. I can't watch that on a Friday night while I'm sitting on my couch. That is only saved for when I'm on the elliptical in the gym. Or if we're like talking about food prep, maybe you have a really favorite brew of coffee. And the only time you can drink this favorite brew of coffee is when you're doing your food prep in the morning. If you don't do your food prep, then you have to drink the shitty 99-cent coffee, from the store that isn't very good. But you get to have the really expensive, tasty one every time you're food prepping there. So basically, again, it's pairing that inherently enjoyable, rewarding activity with that need to, should do, have to do activity. And you make a pact that that's the only time you'll do that inherently enjoyable activity is with that. Now, of course, over time, you can kind of get out of that pact and maybe you still pair it together, but you probably also have a little bit more intrinsic motivation to keep doing it. But initially, you got to keep that pact with yourself in order for that specific strategy to work. There's a variety of more strategies that are based in behavioral science, but I could talk for literally hours on them.
Oh, 2 weeks.
Take the course and we'll spend 2 weeks on it for sure.
That's cool. That's awesome. And
Yeah.
just remind us again. So the course intake, when's the course started? The intake starting.
So the course will start August 29th and it will run through November 6th, 10 weeks straight. So again, if you are interested in taking it, you do have to be in a place, you do have to have the ability, if we're talking about that, to set aside 15 to 20 minutes a day for 10 weeks. Of course, we do understand that things come up and maybe you miss, a couple days and you have to batch them together at the end of the week. But ideally, you want to be able to be engaged daily for 10 weeks. And registration is open through this coming Sunday. So it will close down on Sunday. And then if you'd like to talk to us more, just to figure out if the course is a right fit for you, email us at habitcoachpro@gmail.com. Even if it goes past 24 hours, if you feel like a conversation is needed, we'll still offer you that discount that we put up there for $250 off, because we do want to really make sure it's a good fit for you. We don't want you to get in and feel like this is not the right thing for you, because then it's not the right thing for us either, and that's no fun for anybody. Especially with how interactive we ask you to be. We definitely want to make sure that you're ready, willing, and able to do that right now. And then if you already feel like, this is for you, you can use that link we put in there, www.habitcoachpro.com/PTD Ninja. That link will be live for 24 hours if you feel like you want to get in there. And if for some reason, like I said, you want to have a conversation and it goes a little past 24 hours, we can create a unique link for you to use to still get that discount as well.
Awesome. Appreciate it. So I'll get everything that was just mentioned there. I'll put it into the post or the comments below this, so you can pick all those things up. And
would it be helpful if I create a PDF of the presentation?
Yeah, if you've got that, that'll be amazing. It'll be really helpful.
And send it to you as well, so people can watch it back.
Yeah, if you can, that'll be amazing.
Okay.
I know you broke up for a second.
I'll do that right after this and just ping it over to you.
Awesome, appreciate it. Yeah, so we'll get the PDF out the presentation into the comments as well. A links to go and find out more about the course and sign up, and also the email if you want to ask any questions about what's going on with it. Thank you so much for coming on and hanging around and doing questions as well at the end. Obviously, anyone watching this on the replay, just drop a replay in the comments as well, just to let us know. So if you've got any questions, or I suppose you can put them in the comments. And much as I can't answer much about the course, but Erin's around the group, so I'm sure she might answer a couple of questions.
Just tag me there. If you tag me, I'll definitely answer them.
Awesome.
At Erin Laverone.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much again. Appreciate your time coming on. Thank everyone for listening as well. Answer your questions, be nice and interactive as always. And yeah, I'll see you all at the next live. Cheers, everyone. Thanks. Bye bye.
Bye. Thanks, Ash.